Short-run costs and the law of diminishing returns. Okay, you remember we did a lot of work in the last few lectures discussing production and developing this idea of the law of diminishing returns, which says that eventually, as we add more of a variable input like labor to our fixed input, that variable input becomes less productive. Or put another way, the marginal product of labor or any variable input may increase for a while, but eventually it decreases. This result can tell us a lot about what the firm's costs look like. The law of diminishing returns has the direct implication for the firm's costs. Here's how it works. If the marginal product of labor is decreasing, that means we're getting less output for each additional unit of the variable input. In a sense, the productivity of labor of each worker or each hour worked is decreasing as we add more labor to our production process in an attempt to produce more. But if the marginal productivity of labor is decreasing, then it must cost more to produce another unit of output. In order to get that additional unit of output, we have to use more of the variable input. We have to hire more workers. But each worker is going to contribute a little bit less, and they're going to cost the same. So that means it must cost more to produce that additional unit than the previous units we produced. As a consequence, as a direct result of the law of diminishing returns, the marginal cost of the output must be increasing. In fact, you can think of the relationship between the product curves, particularly the marginal and average product curves, and the cost curves, particularly the marginal and average cost curves, as sort of being reflections of each other. Notice how at the top of this diagram, I've got the product curves. I've got marginal product, which is increasing and then falling. It's got this hump shape. And it passes through the height of the average product curve. Below that is sort of a reflection. If you think about if you held this up to a pond or a mirror or something and it reflected into it. Below that, we've got the cost curves. The marginal cost is decreasing over the region of output where marginal product is increasing. And then its marginal cost starts increasing over the level of output where marginal product is decreasing. Marginal cost increases where marginal product decreases. And just like marginal product passes through the peak of average product, marginal cost passes through the bottom of average cost. So all the product curves, because of the law of diminishing returns, all look like humps. While all the cost curves, that is the marginal and average cost curves, all have sort of a U-shaped. That's all because of the law of diminishing returns. Once again, as well, we have marginal product increasing and ultimately decreasing, and we have marginal cost decreasing and ultimately decreasing because eventually we get less from the same inputs, so the cost of producing an additional input goes up. Hump-shaped product curves, U-shaped marginal and average cost curves. And once again, you go through the peak and the bottom of the average product and average marginal and average cost curve. The law of diminishing returns can also be seen in the diagram for total costs. Here's an interesting way of looking at the relationship between total, variable, and fixed costs. We've got output on the horizontal axis and total cost or just cost on the vertical axis. Notice that fixed costs are constant because that's the definition of fixed cost. They do not vary with the level of output. You have to pay the same rent whether you sell a lot of pizzas or no pizzas. Variable cost, on the other hand, notice that it's kind of flat for a while. Cost isn't going up very much. That's that region where marginal product is increasing. But eventually, variable cost starts increasing at a rapid rate. That's when the law of diminishing returns starts kicking in. And because we get total cost from adding variable cost to fixed cost, all you do is kind of shift up the variable cost curve by the amount of the fixed cost to get total costs. So even in our total cost curve, we can see the law of diminishing returns rearing its ugly head. Oh, one last comment. Once again, I've included a numerical exercise from the Khan Academy as a video that you can watch. This is a really good exercise because the problem has been set up so that if they include marginal product in the calculations, they calculate that and show how, because of decreasing marginal product, you get increasing marginal cost. So it's a really good illustration in numerical terms of the relationship between the law of diminishing returns and our cost curves. I think that gives you a much more intuitive feel than just looking at these diagrams. So I highly recommend that you watch that video as well as reading the book. And of course, now you've listened to this lecture.